Fear is the invisible prison that keeps millions of people living far below the level of greatness they were born to reach. It is the silent thief that steals dreams before they are even given a chance to breathe. Fear whispers lies into the mind, telling you that you are too weak, too late, too ordinary, too broken to rise. It creates imaginary walls where none truly exist. And because most people bow before fear, they spend their lives watching opportunity pass by like a train they were too afraid to board. But hear this clearly. Fear has no real power except the power you choose to give it. The moment you confront it, challenge it, and move forward despite it, fear begins to crumble like dust beneath the feet of courage. Every achievement in human history began when someone refused to surrender to fear. The inventor feared failure but experimented anyway. The leader feared criticism but spoke anyway. The dreamer feared rejection but pursued the vision anyway. Courage does not mean you feel no fear. Courage means you have trained your mind to act in spite of it. Inside every person lives two voices. One voice speaks of doubt, caution, and excuses. The other voice speaks of faith, possibility, and action. The voice you feed becomes your destiny. If you feed fear, your world shrinks. If you feed faith, your world expands. Fear of poverty has stopped countless people from taking bold action. Fear of criticism has buried more talent than lack of ability ever could. Fear of failure has destroyed more dreams than failure itself. Understand this powerful truth: failure is not your enemy. Failure is a teacher. Every setback carries within it the seed of an equal or greater advantage. The people who achieve extraordinary success are not those who avoid falling. They are those who rise every time they fall, stronger, wiser, and more determined than before. Defeat is temporary unless you accept it as permanent. Your mind is the greatest weapon you possess, and fear begins there. If you allow negative thoughts to dominate your imagination, fear multiplies. But when you deliberately plant thoughts of purpose, confidence, and victory, your mind becomes a magnet for achievement. The person who masters their thoughts masters their life. Speak to yourself with authority. Replace "what if I fail" with "what if I succeed beyond imagination." Replace "I can't" with "I will find a way." The human mind responds to repeated belief. What you consistently tell yourself becomes the blueprint of your reality. Most people wait for certainty before they act, but certainty rarely comes before action. Action creates clarity. Movement destroys doubt. The longer you hesitate, the stronger fear becomes. The moment you step forward, fear begins to lose its grip. Success has always belonged to those who decide quickly and act boldly. Opportunities are often disguised as risks, and those who fear less are the ones who recognize them first. Life rewards decision, not hesitation. Do not ask for an easier path, ask for a stronger mind. Challenges are not punishments, they are preparation. Every obstacle you conquer increases your confidence. Every fear you face expands your power. You were not designed to live a small, timid existence. You were created with the ability to think, decide, persist, and triumph. Greatness is not reserved for the fearless. It is reserved for those who refuse to let fear decide their future. The world belongs to those who dare to believe bigger, dare to act stronger, dare to persist longer than your fears. The door to achievement opens only when you stop negotiating with doubt and start marching with faith. Fear will always knock at your door, but you do not have to invite it in. Stand firm in your purpose, and fear will retreat. Today, make a decision that will alter the course of your life. Will no longer allow fear to control your choices, your dreams, or your destiny. You will think boldly, act courageously, and persist relentlessly. For when fear becomes smaller, your potential becomes larger. When doubt becomes weaker, your power becomes stronger. Fear less, and you will achieve more than you ever imagined possible. Fear is the oldest enemy of human progress. It has stood at the gateway of every great dream, every bold decision, every life-changing opportunity, asking one question: are you certain? And because so many people wait for certainty before they move, fear becomes the chain that binds them to mediocrity. They remain trapped not because they lack talent, intelligence, or desire, but because they allow fear to become greater than their vision. Fear is a master deceiver. It paints failure as fatal, rejection as unbearable, and struggle as impossible. It convinces people that safety is wisdom, when often safety is merely stagnation. Yet the greatest truth you can ever understand is this: everything you desire most in life exists on the other side of fear. Fear has shattered more ambitions than lack of opportunity ever could. It has convinced brilliant minds to stay silent, powerful leaders to remain hidden, and gifted souls to live beneath their calling. Fear does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it appears as hesitation, procrastination, self-doubt, or excuses disguised as logic. It whispers, "Wait until the time is right. You are not ready. What if you fail?" But those whispers have stolen fortunes, buried invention, and erased possibilities. The tragedy of fear is not that it can make you fail. The tragedy is that it can stop you from even trying. Within your mind lies a battlefield where success or defeat is first determined. On one side stands fear, armed with doubt, worry, and uncertainty. On the other side stands faith, armed with vision, courage, and determination. Whichever force you strengthen will shape your future. If you dwell on weakness, obstacles, and imagine disasters, fear grows stronger. But if you focus on purpose, opportunity, and belief, faith becomes your commander. Your thoughts are not harmless visitors. They are the architects of your destiny. A fearful mind creates a fearful life. A courageous mind creates extraordinary achievement. Every person who has ever risen above the ordinary has faced fear. The difference is not that they were immune to fear, but that they refused to obey it. The entrepreneur risks failure. The speaker risks judgment. The visionary risks ridicule. Yet they move forward because they understand a secret that changes everything. Fear is often a sign that you are approaching something valuable. Fear appears strongest when you are closest to growth. It stands guard at the edge of your greatest breakthrough, because beyond that point lies transformation. Consider how many people surrender before the battle even begins. They fear poverty, so they never pursue wealth. They fear criticism, so they never express greatness. They fear rejection, so they never ask. They fear failure, so they never begin. They spend years preparing, planning, and wishing, but never fully committing. They become experts at excuses rather than achievement. But success does not reward those who merely think about action. It rewards those who act. Action is the antidote to fear. The moment you move, fear begins to weaken. When you confront what scares you, your mind starts to realize that fear was exaggerating its power. Bold action rewires the spirit. It replaces uncertainty with experience, doubt with momentum, and weakness with confidence. You do not eliminate fear by waiting. You eliminate fear by advancing. The soldier gains courage not by avoiding battle, but by entering it. The champion is not the one who never feels pressure, but the one who performs despite it. Failure itself is misunderstood by most people. They treat it as evidence of weakness, when in reality it is often evidence of courage. Failure means you dared. Failure means you attempted something beyond comfort. Failure means you entered the arena while others remain spectators. Every defeat carries knowledge. Every mistake contains instruction. Every obstacle can strengthen discipline if you refuse to quit. The greatest victories are often built upon the foundations of past disappointments. Temporary defeat is not the end unless you choose to stop. Your environment also shapes your fear. If you surround yourself with negativity, limitation, and doubt, your courage will slowly erode. But when you align yourself with ambition, purpose, and belief, your confidence expands. The people around you can either magnify your fears or magnify your strengths. Choose wisely. Protect your mind from those who speak defeat more fluently than possibility. A powerful mind must be guarded like a fortress. One of the greatest fears humanity faces is the fear of criticism. Many people would rather live unfulfilled than be judged for trying. They wear masks to fit expectations and abandon dreams to avoid disapproval. But criticism is often the tax paid by those who dare to be different. If you allow the opinions of others to dictate your path, you hand them control over your destiny. The crowd has never created greatness. Greatness is usually born when an individual trusts their vision more than public opinion. Fear also shrinks when purpose becomes stronger. A person with a weak reason will surrender quickly, but a person driven by burning desire becomes unstoppable. Desire is the fuel of persistence. When your reason for succeeding becomes more powerful than your fear of failing, your life changes. You stop asking whether it is possible and start demanding results. Desire transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary endurance. There is no power greater than a disciplined mind combined with fearless persistence. When you decide that your dream is non-negotiable, obstacles become lessons instead of barriers, problems become puzzles, delays become preparation. Fear loses authority when determination takes command. You begin to understand that life is not testing your worth, it is testing your willingness. Most limits are self-imposed. The chains that hold people back are often mental, not physical. They are built from years of doubt, disappointment, and conditioning. But chains can be broken. You are not imprisoned by your past unless you choose to live there. The future responds to boldness. It responds to those who are willing to challenge old beliefs and replace them with stronger convictions. Courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Every small act of bravery prepares you for greater victories. Speak when fear says stay silent. Begin when fear says wait. Believe when fear says doubt. Persist when fear says quit. Each time you do, you prove to yourself that fear is not your master. The world makes room for those who know where they are going. Those who fear less command more opportunities because they are willing to take the steps others avoid. Achievement is not reserved for the lucky. It belongs to those who train themselves to think bigger than fear, act stronger than doubt, and persist longer than adversity. At this very moment, your future is being shaped by one decision: will you obey fear, or will you conquer it? If you continue to bow before fear, your life will remain smaller than your potential. But if you rise, act, and persist, there is no limit to what you can achieve. Fear is not your destiny. Courage is, power is, greatness is. So stand up with confidence. Burn hesitation from your mind. Silence the voice that says you cannot. Replace it with the certainty that you will. Move boldly toward the life you were meant to create. For the person who fears less does not merely survive. They lead, they conquer, and they achieve more than the world ever thought possible. Fear has enslaved more human potential than any external force in history. It has kept inventors from creating, leaders from rising, and dreamers from becoming. It is the hidden enemy behind countless unfinished goals, abandoned visions, and wasted talents. Fear is not merely an emotion. It is a mental habit, a condition of uncertainty that grows stronger each time you retreat from challenge. It is the shadow that appears larger when you turn your back on the light of courage. But understand this with absolute clarity. Fear is never the true barrier between you and greatness. The real barrier is your willingness to surrender to it. Every human being is born with the capacity to achieve extraordinary things, yet only a small number ever rise to the highest levels of success. Why? Because most people allow fear to dominate their thinking. They fear loss, criticism, rejection, hardship, uncertainty, and failure. These fears become chains around the mind, restricting imagination and paralyzing action. A person may possess immense intelligence, talent, and opportunity, but if fear controls their decisions, they remain trapped in an invisible cage. Fear does not have to destroy you dramatically to defeat you. It only needs to convince you to remain where you are. Fear is the enemy of decision. It clouds judgment, delays action, and weakens ambition. It creates endless what-if questions that drain courage from the spirit. What if I fail? What if people laugh? What if I lose? But these questions are rarely balanced by their equally powerful opposites. What if I succeed? What if I inspire? What if I transform my life? The mind tends to magnify what it focuses on. If you focus on danger, you become hesitant. If you focus on possibility, you become powerful. Your future is often determined not by your circumstances, but by the dominant thoughts you allow to shape your behavior. The greatest achievers in every field understood something that average minds often overlook. Fear is natural, but surrender is optional. Fear may knock at your door, but you decide whether it enters your house. Bold individuals are not free from fear. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions. They have learned that courage is not the absence of trembling, but the mastery of movement despite trembling. When fear says stop, courage says proceed. When fear says hide, courage says rise. When fear says you are not enough, courage declares that growth begins now. The fear of failure is perhaps the greatest thief of dreams. Many people would rather live with the pain of regret than risk temporary defeat. They avoid bold goals because failure seems too painful. Yet failure is not the opposite of success. It is often part of success. Failure teaches lessons that comfort never could. It reveals weaknesses, sharpens discipline, and strengthens resilience. Every successful person has encountered setbacks, mistakes, and disappointments. The difference is that they treated these experiences as stepping stones rather than tombstones. They understood that temporary defeat is merely instruction in disguise. When you train your mind to reinterpret failure, fear begins to lose its power. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid mistakes?" ask, "What can this teach me?" Instead of viewing obstacles as signs to quit, see them as evidence that you are moving beyond your comfort zone. Growth is uncomfortable because it requires expansion, and expansion often feels unfamiliar. Fear thrives in unfamiliarity, but greatness is born there. One of fear's most destructive forms is the fear of criticism. Entire lives have been diminished because people cared more about public opinion than personal purpose. They sought approval instead of fulfillment. They remained silent to avoid judgment. They abandoned dreams to fit expectations. But the opinions of others cannot determine your destiny unless you surrender your authority to them. Those who achieve greatness often walk paths that others do not understand at first. Vision requires independence. You cannot become extraordinary if your every decision depends on the comfort of conformity. A burning desire is the great conqueror of fear. Weak wishes collapse under pressure, but powerful desire creates persistence. When your reason becomes strong enough, your excuses become weaker. A person who truly desires freedom will endure discomfort. A person who deeply desires success will outwork fear. Desire transforms effort into obsession, obstacles into challenges, and setbacks into strategy. It is the internal fire that keeps you moving when lesser minds retreat. Fear also feeds on idleness. The longer you delay, the larger fear appears. Procrastination gives fear time to build imaginary disasters in your mind. Action interrupts that process. Action forces reality to replace assumption. The first step is often the hardest because it breaks inertia. But once movement begins, momentum becomes your ally. Progress builds confidence, and confidence weakens fear. You do not need to see the entire staircase to begin climbing. You need only the courage to take the first step. Your environment can either strengthen fear or strengthen faith. If you surround yourself with doubt, negativity, and limitation, your ambition will slowly shrink. But when you expose yourself to courage, discipline, and possibility, your thinking expands. The mind absorbs influence. Therefore, guard it carefully. Avoid those who constantly magnify risk while minimizing opportunity. Protect your mental atmosphere as fiercely as you would protect your physical health. A courageous life requires a courageous mindset. Self-discipline is one of the greatest weapons against fear. Fear often attacks when emotions are unstable and thoughts are chaotic. Discipline creates order. It teaches you to act based on purpose rather than mood. The disciplined person does not wait to feel fearless before moving. They move because the mission matters more than temporary emotion. Discipline transforms courage from an occasional act into a permanent character trait. The imagination is another battlefield where fear must be defeated. Imagination can either create nightmares or possibilities. Many people misuse this gift by mentally rehearsing disaster. They imagine embarrassment, failure, and rejection so vividly that they sabotage themselves before beginning. But imagination can also be used to envision success, progress, and achievement. The same mind that creates fear can create faith. The choice is yours. Visualize yourself overcoming. See yourself succeeding. Train your subconscious mind to expect victory rather than defeat. Life will always test you. There will always be moments of uncertainty, challenge, and discomfort. But these moments are not punishments, they are opportunities to discover your strength. Fear asks you to shrink. Life asks you to expand. Fear says remain safe. Destiny says become more. Every challenge you conquer increases your capacity. Every fear you overcome strengthens your identity. Remember this forever: the size of your life is often determined by the size of the fears you are willing to confront. Small fears create small living. Great courage creates great achievement. The door to abundance, purpose, and influence is rarely opened by comfort. It is opened by boldness. You were not created to spend your life imprisoned by doubt. You were given the power to think, decide, act, and persist. Within you is the ability to rise beyond every fear that once held you captive. But power unused is wasted potential. You must choose. You must decide that fear will no longer be the author of your story. Stand now in the authority of that decision. Refuse to let uncertainty rob you of possibility. Refuse to let criticism silence your voice. Refuse to let temporary defeat define your future. You are stronger than your fear, greater than your doubt, and more capable than your past suggests. Move forward boldly, because every step taken in courage weakens fear's control. Every dream pursued with faith expands your destiny. Every obstacle faced with persistence increases your power. Fear less, not because the road is easy, but because your purpose is greater than your fear. And when you finally master fear, you will unlock the limitless force within you that has been waiting all along to achieve more than you ever imagined possible. Fear is the dark room where failure is developed long before failure ever becomes reality. It is the silent architect of limitation, constructing barriers in the mind that do not exist in the world. Before a person ever loses in life, they often lose first in thought. Fear enters quietly, disguising itself as caution, logic, or practicality, and then slowly begins to dictate decisions. It convinces brilliant minds to settle, gifted souls to hesitate, and powerful ambitions to shrink. It does not always shout, sometimes it whispers. It whispers, "This is too risky. You are not prepared. People will judge you. Wait a little longer." And because so many obey these whispers, they spend their lives standing on the edge of greatness without ever stepping forward. Yet the truth remains eternal. Fear only controls the person who accepts it as authority. Within every human mind there exists an extraordinary power capable of reshaping circumstance, conquering adversity, and creating achievement beyond imagination. But that power can only be accessed when fear is challenged. Fear and faith cannot dominate the mind at the same time. One weakens as the other grows. If fear becomes your master, faith becomes your prisoner. If faith becomes your master, fear becomes your servant. This is one of life's greatest laws. The mind moves in the direction of its strongest belief. Therefore, the person who constantly rehearses danger, failure, and disappointment strengthens fear. But the person who repeatedly focuses on possibility, victory, and purpose strengthens power. Fear is often inherited through environment. Many people are taught to fear failure before they are ever taught to pursue success. They are warned more often than they are encouraged. They are taught to avoid mistakes instead of using mistakes as education. Society often rewards safety while secretly admiring courage. As a result, countless individuals spend years trying to protect themselves from pain rather than preparing themselves for greatness. But safety has never been the birthplace of extraordinary achievement. Greatness demands expansion, and expansion requires discomfort. Consider this truth carefully. Every major advancement in history came from someone who was willing to act despite uncertainty. Every invention, every movement, every breakthrough began when someone refused to let fear dictate their future. They did not possess magical immunity from doubt. They possessed a stronger commitment to purpose. Purpose is the great destroyer of fear. When your mission becomes greater than your insecurity, your courage expands. When your desire burns hotter than your doubt, action becomes inevitable. The fear of criticism is one of the deadliest forms of fear because it enslaves identity. It causes people to abandon authenticity in exchange for approval. It teaches them to ask, "What will others think?" before asking, "What do I truly want?" This fear has buried more dreams than poverty, hardship, or lack of opportunity combined. Why? Because criticism attacks self-image, and many people would rather protect their image than pursue transformation. But understand this: no great achievement was ever built by seeking universal approval. Those who change their lives, industries, or the world itself are often misunderstood before they are celebrated. The crowd usually doubts before it applauds. To achieve more, you must become willing to disappoint the expectations of fear. You must accept that not everyone will understand your path. You must recognize that criticism is often the price paid for ambition. Those who do nothing are rarely criticized because they pose no challenge to the ordinary. But those who dare to rise often become targets simply because courage exposes the fear in others. Therefore, never allow outside doubt to become internal defeat. Fear also thrives through indecision. Indecision is fear's workshop. The longer a person delays, the stronger fear becomes. Hesitation creates confusion, and confusion weakens power. Successful people are often distinguished not merely by intelligence, but by decisiveness. They make choices, act boldly, and adjust when necessary. They understand that imperfect action often produces more progress than perfect hesitation. Opportunity rarely waits for endless contemplation. Life rewards movement. Decision is a declaration of power. The moment you decide firmly, your mind begins organizing resources, ideas, and opportunities around that commitment. But when you remain uncertain, your energy becomes divided. Fear feeds on divided energy. This is why one of the greatest habits you can develop is the habit of decisive action. Make a decision, commit, advance, correct along the way if needed, but move. Fear of failure is another illusion that has destroyed countless ambitions. Most people treat failure like a final verdict, when in reality it is often a temporary lesson. Failure is not designed to define you. It is designed to refine you. Every setback contains information. Every defeat offers instruction. Every disappointment can become preparation if your mindset remains strong. The difference between those who ultimately succeed and those who surrender is often simple. One interprets failure as education, while the other interprets it as identity. Never confuse an event with who you are. A failed attempt does not mean you are a failure. A rejection does not mean you are unworthy. A delay does not mean denial. Circumstances are temporary unless you surrender permanence to them. Persistence transforms temporary defeat into eventual triumph. Those who achieve greatness are not always the most talented, but they are often the most relentless. Relentlessness is born from vision. When your vision becomes clear enough, fear begins to lose clarity. Vision gives suffering meaning. Vision gives sacrifice purpose. Vision gives discipline fuel. A person without vision is easily discouraged because they do not know why they are enduring struggle. But a person with vision can withstand enormous adversity because they understand what they are building. Your imagination is one of the most powerful forces you possess, and fear often seeks to corrupt it. Imagination can create mountains of anxiety or worlds of possibility. If you imagine disaster constantly, your body and mind begin reacting as though disaster is inevitable. But if you imagine growth, success, and achievement, your subconscious begins aligning with those expectations. You become what you mentally rehearse. Therefore, guard your imagination carefully. It is either your prison or your launch pad. Action remains the greatest weapon against fear. Knowledge alone is not enough. Inspiration alone is not enough. Desire alone is not enough. Action is what transforms thought into power. Every courageous step weakens fear's authority. Every challenge faced increases confidence. Every risk taken intelligently expands possibility. Fear shrinks when confronted. Do not wait for fear to disappear before you begin. If you wait for complete confidence, you may wait forever. Begin while afraid if necessary, but begin. Strength is developed through use, not avoidance. The warrior becomes strong through battle, not retreat. The leader becomes powerful through responsibility, not hiding. The achiever becomes extraordinary through repeated courageous action. Life is not asking whether you are comfortable. Life is asking whether you are willing. Willing to dream bigger, willing to fail smarter, willing to persist longer, willing to rise stronger. Fear will always present reasons to remain where you are, but greatness demands reasons to move forward. Inside you right now is more power than fear wants you to discover. There is vision waiting to be acted upon, strength waiting to be tested, courage waiting to be exercised, and achievement waiting to be claimed. But none of it can emerge fully while fear remains your commander. So make this decision with conviction. Fear will no longer determine the boundaries of your life. You will not allow doubt to speak louder than purpose. You will not allow criticism to silence ambition. You will not allow temporary defeat to erase eternal possibility. Rise with boldness. Think with faith. Decide with certainty. Act with courage. Persist with relentless determination. The more fear you conquer, the more life you command. The more boldly you move, the more opportunity reveals itself. The more you trust your power, the more extraordinary your results become. Fear less, not because fear vanishes, but because your purpose becomes greater. Achieve more, not because the road becomes easier, but because you become stronger. And when you finally understand that fear was never your true enemy, only your test, you will step into a life of power, abundance, and achievement far beyond anything fear ever tried to keep from you.